Hey guys, what's up? It is week 468, and I guess I should have prepared something a little bit more special than this, because this is technically, since I started this weekly show, I've been doing YouTube way before this weekly show thing, but this is the 9th year of the weekly show, 468, 52 times 9, and I've not missed a show. So this 9-year anniversary, I feel like I got to do something special or change up the format when I hit year 10. It's been a long time. I can't believe I've been doing this for 10 years. I started this when I was 30, the weekly show, and I'm almost damn near 40 now, so we're getting there. Let's just jump right into the reviews, and the first one up is from 1962, and it's a double here, and this is double feature, and this is The Slime People and The Crawling Hand. We're going to start with The Slime People from VCI. The Slime People is a cover. I'm pretty sure a lot of people seen this cover everywhere. It was a movie that I was familiar with by title only. You know, I watch a lot of old horror movies, but somehow the Slime People kind of skipped me. I don't love this cover art, but the original cover art had the monster on the cover, but you know, people will say spoiler, but this movie does not worry about hiding the monster very much. So what is that Corman said? You hide the monster until the last 10 minutes or so, keep suspense going. That's a successful way to make a monster movie. So Slime People opens up, and in the first 30 seconds, first 5 seconds, the Slime People are crawling out of a sewer. And I was like, what the fuck, man? This is the complete opposite of a typical monster movie that you see from the 50s or 60s. So the Slime People are crawling out of the sewer, and they have spears. And I was like, my immediate thought, and this is ridiculous, because I know this is like a popular horror movie, but I didn't know much about it. I was like, oh, it's going to be a guy in a suit. It's going to be a Scooby-Doo thing. This can't be a real slime person. It's got to have some sort of mystery element to it. But no, this plays like kind of your low-budget, standard kind of a monster movie from the late 50s, early 60s. So what happens is the Slime People end up attacking this small town with spears. They come out, and they come with a bunch of fog. And they've created this giant fog wall, if you will, and the military can't get through the fog wall. People have escaped from the town, but there's a couple people that are left behind. One of the guys who runs kind of like a studio, I think it's a movie studio, and a couple like derelicts are hiding out in there as well. But the kind of main group of people that got left behind are a father, his 2 daughters, and this guy who's going to try to, and another young guy. So both the daughters have kind of love interest. The leading guy is an actor that's appeared, you know, he was kind of a bigger guy than a lot of the other people in the movie. There is some cameos and everything of that nature. So this is a bunch of cast and people in here that I'm not super familiar with. You know, I know a lot of actors and stuff, but some of the B movies, especially 50s and 60s and stuff, some of the actors skip me. I don't know them, but the commentary and the special features sure go in depth on them, and it's really great to have that kind of special feature on there. Tom Weaver had recorded interviews with all these people and whatnot in the day, so you hear a lot of that kind of stuff. And I think Tom Weaver is actually one of the best I've heard. Love his voice, love his presence, love how he interviews these people, and he has pretty much a library of interviews with classic actors and people that made these movies, so that really helps kind of Slime People. Slime People itself, you know, it's your standard thing. It does feel like stuff like later on, like Night of the Living Dead survival horror kind of deal, where these characters, this is before though, 62, these characters are trying to survive in the small town, running to place, something like Day of the Triffids. Day of the Triffids has to be around the same time, maybe. I know it was a book or a miniseries, something before the actual first movie by Freddie Francis, and I can't think of the other director who did that one. But yeah, it does have similarities to that, but it is very low budget. It has the humanoids from the Deep kind of school, where they say there's hundreds of these slime people, but you ever only see 3 at a time, so they definitely only created a couple suits, and they reuse them a bunch of times. There's some fun kind of fight scenes with them where they spear the monsters afterwards. Overall, this one is fun and silly and kind of lighthearted in a certain way when you watch it. Don't take it too seriously, but it does wear out its welcome. It kind of became repetitive to me. This is definitely the B end of a double feature. It's the B movie of the feature, right? It's not the A feature. The Crawling Hand would definitely be the A feature, and these 2 pictures played a lot together. It looks really good. They cleaned it up well, and VCI, you know, sometimes like I have some complaints about some of the releases, like the Dark Knight Scarecrow 4K. Great commentary on that release, but with Amanda Reyes. But I just didn't think that it looked very good. Sometimes these they do what they can, but they do these kind of upscale weird things, and it looks odd. But this I thought looked fantastic. I thought they did a good job remastering this one. And there's a bunch of features for both movies. But the Unearthing the Slime People, conversation with Susan Hart on the line, an hour-long archival interview with Susan Hart, Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine, 65, Ride the Wild Surf, 64, Pajama Party by Tom Weaver, OG Monster Kid, noted author and film historian. Yeah, that's great stuff. Ask a lot lot of questions, pops in and gives some context to the interview as well. I love seeing that kind of stuff. And then we have a video. I'm not going to talk about the commentary, the crawling hand, but we have until we get to that video featurette, Rubber Monsters, Real Fears, Mid-Century Sci-Fi, classic drive-in sci-fi poster gallery, two-sided sleeve with original art by Robert Kelly and retro art on the flip side. I'm going to be honest though, the monster effects look pretty damn good. Like the slime people, they're memorable monsters. I remember seeing them, and they stand out. Unfortunately, I think they show them too much. I mean, I don't know why they didn't kind of follow the old school way. It's very much in the kind of vein of like a Silphus, like Spawn of Silphus kind of creature, except Silphus looks a little bit, I guess, gnarlier because he's made of toxic waste or some sort of like pollution or whatever the hell Silphus is made of. But Silphus is also just an alright movie, so I'm not saying like Silphus is vastly superior to the slime people. But this one is overall decent. I like the kind of fun sci-fi, like survival type movie. It's not incredibly graphic or anything of that nature, but Slime People, it's a good, silly time. It's definitely kind of a movie where it's a background movie. It's a B-movie kind of doubleheader where you kind of half paying attention to it in the theaters and you stay for the A1, and this one comes out as the B picture. And you kind of, maybe you're getting some popcorn during Slime People, but great to see it remastered, looking great. Okay, the next one on this double feature of creepy creature double feature is The Crawling Hand. And this one is also, I think they're both 63 actually. And this one I actually liked a lot more. I wasn't really sure where it was going to land here. I love these kind of stories, right, where you have the astronaut who goes to space, something goes wrong, and they kind of crash land, or something crash lands back to Earth, and it's contaminated, it's nasty, it's whatever. They mentioned this in the commentary, and it's 100% in this style, The Quatermass Experiment, which is, I think, one of the great sci-fi movies of all time, and it was a miniseries thing before that. Quatermass has a long history, but great series of films, great original kind of sci-fi movie. But this one follows suit in a lot of those classic kind of sci-fi movies. Another one isn't Kaltiki kind of like that, where the guy comes back from space and he's kind of formed, which is also very much like a Quatermass kind of style movie. But so what we have here is this group of I don't even think they're NASA. I don't think they're NASA. I think they're like, maybe they're like some sort of, maybe they couldn't use NASA. I'm not sure. I feel like they're a little bit off the radar kind of deal, and they're paying for these kind of people to be sent to space, these astronauts, if you will. And one of them has already died, and their second one, they're basically counting down to where he's out of air. Basically he's dead, he's gone. And the guy who's running the project keeps wanting to push these guys into space without concern for their health. And these two guys actually care. And the younger guy is really kind of concerned about this, and he's upset about it. So they get a kind of a transmission from this guy, and he should already be dead. And he looks very zombified, very dark under his eyes, ghostly. And he says, I've been breathing without air for 20 minutes. Please kill me. Please kill me. I'm in a lot of pain. And he starts saying all these things and like that. And he seems obviously demented. He's not himself. And they basically hit the termination button. And we kind of go to this small little town where main focus is kind of I think a young Swedish girl and her boyfriend. The young Swedish girl, her father is like a scientist of sorts. And the young boy is trying to earn her love and everything of that nature. So he is familiar with scientific things of that stuff. So when they're on the beach one day, he sees a severed arm, which is the astronaut's arm. We know it is. And instead of calling the police, he decides to take it home with him. Pretty realistic, right? That's what you do on a first date or a date. When you see a severed arm on the beach, you take it home with you and put it down in the food cellar. Fucking nuts. But that's you kind of have to buy that. So he lives in kind of like a common place house, where people share a room. They rent a room. Much more common in film, and much more common back in the day than it is nowadays, I think. Or maybe it's just not very common in my state, home state, or city, or anything of that nature. But so what happens is this arm obviously is evil, and we got to get that classic take of the moving limb, right? Tons of movies, severed arm, body parts. So many movies have done this stuff where the limbs are kind of alive. The hand, demonoid. It never ends. You could keep going on and on and on. But this is a little bit different. So it does end up attacking some people and kill somebody. Kind of one of the fun comical characters of the film. And it ends up possessing our young boy here. So now he has kind of the evil spirit or possessed from this space entity of this astronaut. I don't know how it works. The hand is also still alive, whatnot. The astronauts somehow track it because there's been a murder with those fingerprints that pop up. The sheriff gets involved. Alan Hale is the sheriff from Gilligan's Island. Also, the great movie there was A Crooked Man. Alan Hale pops up in a lot of stuff. Good solid actor, good sheriff, good small town, 60s kind of 50s kind of sheriff that you'd you'd expect in these small towns. Fills the shoes very well. So yeah, they're all after this kid, and they don't realize that he's been possessed by a space entity while the astronauts are trying to stop them at the same time. The one thing that I find really effective about this movie is it's fast-paced. The characters are good. It's a standard story, but it's well, done in a low-budget kind of aspect, and I love that kind of stuff. But there's one scene that I think is a little above where it sits, in the terms of its time. There is a character who runs kind of like a soda jerk or like an ice cream kind of place, right? And he's kind of a jerk to the kids. He's really bizarre. He gives them an ominous warning earlier in the film, but he has an encounter with our possessed team that knows him, and the way that this kind of like attempted murder is kind of unfolds is, he hits the jukebox and the lights are off and there's shadows and the music's coming on and they're struggling, and I was like, oh wow, this is such a good doing that diegetic music in this movie. I don't know when that first was used, but I was like, this feels a little bit fresh for the time, and I was very happy with that. Again, looks really good, sounds really good for one of these movies that's kind of a B low budget stuff. And they do on the special features here. I don't remember if it was the actual the commentary or Tom Weaver said this. It's one of the ones, but they basically run down and they talk about the video featurette. I think Rubber Monsters Real Fans were this movie. It might have been the commentary by Tom Weaver or our interview talks about what this was paired up with and how long this movie had a shelf life. These B movies had a bigger shelf life than usual. You know what I mean? There was a commentary by Rob Kelly. He artist, reviewer, podcaster, and film buff extraordinaire. He likes the movie. He pokes a little bit of fun at it, but not too much. And I think that he does a serviceable, good commentary on it with good information. But yeah, overall, nice little release. And these movies are really easy to watch for me. It's just kind of like comfort food, right? Where I pop in a 50s or 60s movie, if it's a Roger Corman double feature, Beast from the Haunted Cave or whatever. And I think, honestly, that these are probably, especially The Crawling Hand, is a little bit above some of the Corman cheapy stuff. And I love that stuff, you know what I mean? It's not as good as his, Poe adaptations, but those are much more expensive movies and not sci-fi. But his cheap B movies, I think The Crawling Hand is a little bit better than those. I actually thought it was pretty damn good. But yeah, recommended, restored in 4K. They look great. So check it out from VCI. Okay, the next one up is from Visual Vengeance, and this is Visual Vengeance 26, number 26 on the side, and this is Vampire Time Travelers. And I've seen a lot of the stuff that I've seen every release that they've done, but some of the stuff I know of, like they put out stuff that I'm familiar with, that I'm very familiar with, like cult movies, like the Todd Sheets stuff, or Abomination, and I'm like, okay, that's great, or Bodybuilder from Hell I've heard of, but every once in a while, I'd say about 25% of the time, they put out something that I don't know what it is, or if I've seen it, it's been very brief. And this is Vampire Time Travelers from 1998. And let me see this director's name, Les Skelke. And I did not know of this guy, although I think I had seen some of his stuff before. I think I'd seen his Alien Conspiracy short that's in an anthology movie. I can't remember which one of those I've seen. I've seen 2 of the 3 Alien Conspiracy movies. But okay, so let's jump into Vampire Time Travelers. And okay, so that time frame, the SOV low budget stuff here from '98, it's really hit and miss with me. Most often, it's a miss. I like the transgressive, weird stuff, and I like some of the early stuff, like Blood Cult. I enjoy Boarding House. I enjoy. And then when we get real weird, like the Hugh Gallagher shit, love that stuff. Or the what was the like Spirit Lake and Wolf Lake and stuff like that. Spirit, I can't think of that. Chris Pinion. I've seen a couple of his movies. They're intense. They're crazy. They're wild. Scooter McRae. I love that stuff. It's Tempe stuff too, the super ambitious stuff like Ozone. But when we get to this time frame, a lot of them I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. So I put this in, and within like 5 minutes, I was like, this director is insane. Like, I was like, this guy is nuts, in the best way. Not like certifiable. He's just not like any other voice I've seen. And so when you're dealing with SOV, super dirt cheap, low budget movies, right? Oftentimes personally, these are all personal opinions, of course, I think that directors and people make a huge mistake. I think that they go ahead and make a bad version of a great movie. And then when you're watching it, you think, I'd rather be watching that movie than this. But he's fallen, I think, the correct way. In the commentary, he says you just need a good story, and you need, to be fast-paced, and the right actors and stuff, and everything will come together, and it'll rise above and find its audience. And I think he's right in that terms, because right away I was like, this guy is not following anybody's rules. He's going out and making his weird, wild movie. And the director paired up with a pair of producers that had put out a movie called Sorority House Vampire, I think. And this was supposed to be a semi-sequel, but as they started, they kind of got away from the sequel, and he kind of took over and made it a little bit more zany and out to lunch, if you will. That one's for moods. But so this movie is just very wild and bizarre. And a title like that, you could think, well, this could be bottom of the barrel stuff where they're just not trying and just trying to sound crazy on that. But no, I found myself really enjoying this. And it's incredibly low budget, but it has a lot of heart, and the story's fun, and it's very punny. So this guy was a comedian in the 80s, and you could tell he is ADHD basically in a movie. And ADHD, I'm ADHD, so I don't mean that as an insult, but and it's like not diagnosed on the internet. I was on Ritalin for years, but the idea that that you have all these, he's very quick-witted, so there's a joke every second. And he compares it, some of his films, to like the Airplane style humor, right, where there's a joke every second, and they're all punny. And one joke might not land, but the next one will. So this basic plot is, it mixes in the sorority kind of stuff where this girl who's sister of a woman who slayed a vampire is joining this fraternity, and that's where her sister went. But the sister of the vampire who is slayed is contacting her sister from beyond the grave. Very funny lines where they're like, I'm undead beyond the grave, but you're already dead, so you're undead, you're dead, and whatever. They have this huge argument about it, but she's contacting her sister, Lorelei, to go, I think is it Lorelei or is it whichever, I'm confusing the vampires, but go to kill this sister. So essentially, this sorority pledge has to kind of maneuver through a pledge night at the same time fighting off these advances of a vampire, while this vampire has to gain her strength back because she was kind of condemned to this coffin by another faction of vampires. Really weird, right? Sounds convoluted, but it's pretty fun to follow. And she has to deal with all the weird other sorority sisters pledging, the evil sorority lady. And there's a point in this movie where I was like, this is weird and bizarre, but there's a character that comes out called the Closet Man, and I was like, oh, this is not in a normal world. This is in its own world of weird random rules and whatever the hell they're doing. And that's when I kind of like I was like, oh, this is not playing in the same world. And there's a character, the Closet Man, that ends up helping some of the sorority pledges. It's really ridiculous and funny and bizarre and very, very punny if you love that, which I do. I think the acting's pretty damn solid in here. Nobody stood out bad. They all stood out pretty well. And at the same time, like the director, you can tell in the moments when he is kind of doing some basically making comments on things. Like he plays a character in the movie where there's somebody that never returns your calls because this guy struggled in Hollywood for years, and he goes to the commentary and explains all this stuff. And I could tell immediately. I was like, oh, he's definitely lashing out there, just kind of like not necessarily bitter, but satirizing, the real Hollywood system or how hard it is to make a movie and all this kind of stuff like that. But overall, I found it incredibly enjoyable, incredibly fast-paced, incredibly weird and bizarre, and zany is the word I would go with. So Vampire Time Travelers, overall, I really enjoyed it. There's a bonus feature that I'm going to talk about too afterwards, but we have new director-approved SD master for digital tape elements, commentary director Liz Skesley, good one, director Liz Skesley interview on both films on here, actress J.J. Rogers interview, actress Angela Scott interview, director of photography Dennis Devine, and assistant director Steve Jarvis interview. Short film Not So Grim Reaper, which ended up getting popped into one of the Alien conspiracy films, which I think Kevin Lindenmuth, who directed Vampires and Other Stereotypes, actually had parts in both those movies. And I think Tim Ritter even did one of those. I remember watching a couple of those way back in the day with Joel D. Wynkoop, and I remember being okay on them. I do not remember this short vividly on there if I did see it, but Not So Grim Reaper is pretty fucking funny. The Grim Reaper basically giving people the lot on life, and they're like Play-Doh, and they're arguing with them. I found that very funny. And Vampire Time Travelers trailer, and then we have the bonus movie, which I'll talk about when we get into that. But overall, I would recommend this one, and remember, biter in the butt, raging free. It's from a SD master tape element, so it's the best it can look. But overall, I thought it was enjoyable. Nothing distracting on how it did. It says biter in the butt right on the cover there, which is kind of a joke in the movie. But yeah, good stuff. Okay, the next movie on the Vampire Time Travelers is I Know What You Did in Last English Class. What is it? I'm double checking here. I Know What You Did in English Class from 2000, originally 2001, and it was shelved, finished in 2003 or something like that, and shelved until now. Same director, same style, and he tells a story about how he came across, dropping his daughter off at daycare, and it's really touching, and he was like, and that's when I realized when I was in Hollywood, I didn't want to do this anymore, and I just moved back to Ohio, and he continued his life with his family and everything of that nature, finished editing his movie, and hung it up. And then he said Rob from Visual Vengeance Wild Eye contacted him, and this is for this movie, for Vampire Time Travelers, and this one they had as well, and they put it out first time it's been released. And this was a fucking wild movie, man. The first 5 minutes is even crazier than Vampire Time Travelers, and I was like, what the hell's going on? What is happening? And he has this weird phonetic editing pace where it's very chaotic and weird, and fast cuts, weird stuff. Like the cutaways in like Natural Born Killers, right? Where it'll be like this and weird stuff. It's very much in that vein, but comedic and bizarre. And he got the idea to make this movie because in high school, he basically was the bad kid in the class that tortured the hell out of this teacher, this English teacher, Mrs. D. Just tortured the hell out of her. And he said he felt bad. It's like, well, and they used to joke around the next year, him and a couple of his buddies, about what if she came back and got revenge, which is kind of like you do in high school. I mean, I have stories like that from 7th and 8th grade in high school that I don't necessarily want to talk about because like you're just such a terrible kid sometimes in those kind of places like that. And I'm thinking of some of the stuff that we did where we make these inappropriate jokes and everything like that. And 100%, you and your buddy are in a class and you just make this teacher's life a living hell. Sometimes they're good teachers, sometimes they're bad teachers, sometimes they're probably average teachers, and sometimes you probably don't even know what caliber of teacher they are because you're just being a dick. But essentially, and it's funny too because in this movie, he's now the main character's like married to a teacher. My mom was a teacher, so I kind of understood some of this stuff going on. But so, not that I was married to my mom, but you get it. Being having a teacher as a mom and then knowing that you're being a dick to teachers is a weird element. But so essentially what happens is this guy has this weird dream where all his friends are grown up and his age in the dream, but it's like they're back in the high school class and they're just tormenting the hell out of this teacher. Rapid cuts, weird cuts, and she's just clearly on the edge of a mental break, and she ends up kind of snapping. And what happens is his friends start to die in really insane ways. They get caught in this weird kind of crazy scenario where she's like this all-powerful Freddy Krueger type, and the reveal is that she's like in a Patrick style situation in a hospital, right? But she has these Freddy Krueger type powers. It reminds me of like Patrick, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Funny Man, which is another wild, weird movie from 1994, a UK one. But it kind of reminds me of all these kind of weird mixed kind of deals, but low budget, incredibly low budget. But yeah, so these characters keep getting pulled into these weird scenarios with their families and everything, and sometimes they can't control themselves, have some liar aspects going on, and all this weird kind of shit like that, and they get picked off until it comes down to our main guy, and he realizes he's gotta try to stop her. And what happens with him is this great pun battle, right? Where every time they say these typical catchphrases, things will happen like that. It's like, oh, piece of shit car, and his car will turn up, piece of shit, or stuff like that, and it goes on forever, and they're battling back and forth until we have all these random, crazy, weird reveals. I thought this was really fun and weird and so different that I couldn't help but enjoy it. I guess another kind of movie that's in my memory that I feel is kind of in the vein of this would be like Hey Stop Stabbing Me that Severin put out, which I saw years ago and I haven't rewatched since the Blu-ray, but I did see it, and I remember that being really weird and zany too. I doubt it's kind of like this, but I just feel like the same vibes might be in it. Not quite anything like this guy's work, but I thought this was enjoyable too and entertaining, and I think I might even like this one a little bit more just because the aspect is just even fucking crazier. But here's we go here. I Know What You Did in English Class 2000. English Class commentary with director. Director talks about the movie as well. Dennis Devine and production assistant Steve Jarvis. English Class actor Russell Town. Interview I Know What You Did in English Class. Visual Ventures trailer. Trailers, reversible sleeve, all that kind of stuff like that. Folded mini poster. But there's also some fun aspects where, they talk about this guy had this that's comedy show that won Emmys and stuff like. So this guy was very talented in the humor and department. He did like a radio show afterwards. The guy's a ball of energy. He's super unique, and you could tell that this guy had a entertaining quality about him. And I really it did resonate when he basically said he was done with the movie stuff. It resonated, because a lot of times he's tired of the hustle. And there's a lot of people that do stop making movies that are very fun or good at it because they don't really get the chance to make something like huge. And they just are going to struggle forever and ever. And I'm always amazed, not that I'm saying that they're dumb or that, I'm just amazed that a lot of times they keep pushing forward, a lot of these guys, and keep making movies. It's like we talked about the Polonia brothers last week with Saurians, and all those movies they keep pushing on. And anybody like Tim Ritter and his interviews and commentaries and stuff, you're like, man, this dude is driven. I love movies. So I had that drive to be involved with movies, and I realized I'd rather talk about movies and watch movies and just look at them from a outside perspective than be involved with them like I was. I just don't, and I just couldn't, I just can't do it. I realized it wasn't for me. I enjoyed watching them and talking about them and sharing them with other people more than I ever did making them or being in them, to be honest. But I appreciated his insights on this, and I enjoyed this release. And I thought this was a great release. See, I didn't care for Saurians. I love the background on Saurians, but this one I enjoyed the background and the movie itself. Vampire time travelers. Again, they're shot on low, like digital kind of stuff. That was how movies were made back then, especially low budget movies. So if it sounds like up your alley, check it out. Vampire time travelers. And I'm always mixed on the visual vengeance stuff in terms of the film itself. The qualities of the releases are nice, but that one I would give a nice recommend, especially if you like low budget, weird, zany, fun stuff. Yeah, check it out. Oh, I do want to mention about Vampire Time Travelers. He said that he cut out some nudity, and this is a newer version of it. There was mild nudity that he did cut out. I know that's going to be important to some people when they watch this. They want usually Visual Vengeance has multiple versions. It did not have the nudity version in here, so I know that might bother some people, and I do think that's important to let people know. I know that, like, Gorotica, the Hugh Gallagher one from Wild Eye, was a different edited version. It was chopped up a little bit, and I think that had to do with something with licensing rights. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah. I know people do like to know that kind of information, and it is important, so there we go. Okay, we're going to start a box set. Normally, sometimes I like to tackle all of them at once, but this was a lot on my plate this week. I'm having dental surgery tomorrow, so I couldn't get to everything. But this is the Suzzanna, Empress of Darkness. Suzzanna is probably the premier horror actress from Indonesia, and I was not too familiar with Suzzanna until I actually started my journey in the 80s, and I caught a lot of Indonesian movies since the 1980. I've watched a bunch, and Suzzanna and like Barry Prima, especially Suzzanna, is the actress that kind of stands out when you're talking these movies here. So they originally had this documentary, Suzzanna Empress, Queen of Evil, what is it called? Queen of Black Magic, because she's the star of Black Magic, with great, excellent Indonesian horror film. But this was originally in the All Haunts box set, and then they also had Ghost with Hole, aka Sundin Bolong on it, which is a good movie from '81. But this set actually adds has Queen of Black Magic on it, and it has 5 Suzzanna movies, including her last film, Ghost Ambulance. Now, I didn't watch all these, but we're gonna start right here with the Queen of Black Magic documentary and Ghost Ambulance, and we're gonna move on to the next ones next week. If we can get all 4, maybe we'll just get 2. But yeah, great box set from Severin. I think Severin is probably king when it comes to box sets when they do those All Haunts and the Christopher Lee sets and stuff. Just great stuff. But yeah, so Suzzanna, the Queen of Black Magic. We'll start with that one. This is directed by David Gregory, who's that runs Severin Films, but he also makes a bunch of award-winning documentaries, including The Clones of Bruce Lee and tons of stuff like that. And listening to his interview on the disc, he was like, I wanted to do something that not many people know about or talk about, and I appreciate that, because I tend to watch a lot of movies that no one's talking about or dig deep, and to do this and shine some light on Suzzanna for the Western kind of world is great, to be honest. It's a great little documentary here, and it starts off talking a little bit about Indonesia as a whole. I think I can't remember exactly the bits in order where it goes to, but they did tackle like how Indonesia's film market got started, how the Dutch owned it, and then after World War II, Indonesia kind of claimed to be like its own country and everything like that. And that's a lot of countries. Like you think Hong Kong was a part of UK and all these places like that, but a little different time periods and other stuff like that. Indonesia is a very unique kind of country. There's a lot of they mention a lot of people are Christian there, but there's a heavy Muslim influence as well. A lot of Muslims there, so a lot of their films have these weird kind of ranges where they can be violent at times and somewhat sexual and have a lot of myths and fantasy elements within them, right? Because that's kind of where the powers come from, magic and fantasy and all their own kind of urban legends and everything like that are not from, your typical Muslim or Catholicism or anything like that. But at the same time, they do have somewhat of a stricter thing, I would say, when it comes to nudity. In fact, in the early 80s, I don't think any of these movies kind of brushed against nudity except Sang Karang, which kind of surprised me when I saw it. And I'm watching some of these when they get to the little more closer to the mid 80s, and I'm noticing that the sexual kind of stuff is being pushed to a certain extent, which I find kind of different. And I'm like, oh wow, they are kind of progressing here. But this movie here, David Gregory talks about her early life, her first film roles, not him himself, but interviews with family and old friends and co-stars and experts, and Joko Anwar, who's basically the face of Indonesian horror today. So we go all through these different things, right, where David Gregory has put all these people together. His producer on here has got a lot of these people to kind of comment on here, and I was very impressed with the information on here. And of course, as it goes on, they talk about her rise in her first horror film in the mid 70s, or was it early 70s, going all the way to the early 80s, where that was kind of the big boom, right, where we had the Queen of Black Magic in 81 and the Snake Queen trilogy from 82, 83, and 86, and then all that kind of stuff like that, and tons of other movies up until the early 90s when she kind of retired from that. And again, the same kind of thing happened to the Indonesian film world as what happened to the Italian film world, right? A lot of these directors were pushed away and these actors were pushed away, and the import actors kind of left because it was going to television. The same thing happened in Indonesia. And then I guess in the early 2000s since we kind of had a bigger boom in the Indonesian horror, and they talk about bringing Suzzanna back, and she has this big kind of thing in 2007, 2008 with her last film, Ghost Ambulance, and that's also included on the disc. We'll talk about that in a little bit different, but they go over her life, and there's of course tragedy that strikes, which is really sad, and she's this kind of feminist icon within the Indonesian films. And if you watch any of the films early on, right, she has this woman who's wronged a lot of times, who's treated poorly by males in society or rich people in society, and which is very common in Indonesian horror films, right? The rich people or whatever, or the bad people, and there's greedy people and all that kind of stuff like that. And they're going to be punished, and they're going to be punished by somebody who is wronged, who has this magical mystery power or some sort of weird urban legend entity, right? And I've seen probably a couple dozen of these things, and they all have that kind of same deal. Some of them are more horror than others, including Queen of Black Magic and Mystics in Bali and things of that nature, and the Snake Queen. But others lean more into the kind of urban legend or fantasy or these old kind of classic stories like Sangkarang. They also mentioned that she met her second husband on Sangkarang when he was 17 and she was already 40. So like there's like her life is not without controversy, right? And she's still with as a Clift, Clift, the actor who's in Sangkarang, and he's also in a couple other ones as well. Still with him to this day. So I thought the documentary was great. I thought it was sad at the end, and I think that it's great to see kind of this legend, right? And it was kind of like seeing like Coffin Joe, right? Where Coffin Joe had got his Western love, and everybody knows who Coffin Joe is if you're a hardcore horror fans, and he got his box set here, and he had a box set before in UK and all that kind of stuff early on. But Suzzanna, I don't think's had the kind of appreciation that somebody like Coffin Joe has got from Brazil. And there's tons of different horror icons in different countries. There's tons of different horror movies, right? And I watch anything from, horror movies from certain time period, right? And I love discovering these actors and stuff like that. And I've got to the point now where I'm watching these Indonesian films and I'm like, oh, that's Suzzanna, that's Barry Prima, and, other actors as well. And I'm like, oh, that's the character actor, the skinny gaunt guy from The Warrior and stuff, and all these kind of people like that. So I'm getting to like know people by name and face that I normally wouldn't. And this documentary is a great little insight on how, the Indonesian film market works and how the theater system works too, where they have these big kind of almost festivals to watch movies and hang around and watch outside, which seems nice. But love the documentary, highly recommended. As far as the special features on the documentary, we do have a conversation with director and co-producer David Gregory, with the co-producer Eki Amajaya, who talks about helping and getting these people together and all that kind of stuff like that. Interesting for sure. And then David Gregory introduction at Jakarta Film Week screening October 2024. Also good stuff. Highly recommended on the documentary. I think people will really enjoy the documentary, especially if you're sometimes like I'm more interested in the backstory of the movies than the actual movie itself at times, and seeing this adds a lot of context to great stuff. Great, check this one out for sure. I enjoyed the documentary Suzzanna, Queen of Black Magic. Great way to start the box set. Okay, this film on here is Ghost Ambulance from 2008, and this is her last film. I think she died within, a year after this was made, when she was like 65 when she made it. She died at 66, a tragic death, starring Suzzanna, Ghost Ambulance. And, this feels kind of like a lot of the Japanese horror films that were coming out in the early 2000s, and maybe some of the American more low-budget stuff here. But Suzzanna has like an extended cameo. I think it's more than a cameo. It's a pretty decent-sized role, and she's not her typical evil, right, with those glowing eyes. She definitely is playing a more sad kind of character, a character that does have some sort of mysticism about her. In fact, she actually eats like the jasmine flowers in the movie with the water, which is something that she did in real life, which some people thought gave her kind of a mystique about her. She has a mystery quality about her. She never was one to want people to pry into her private life. She more wanted to talk about the films. But she does have a mystery quality about her in the film, and we kind of have this weird element where this young boy is kind of going back to, he's having a struggling with his girlfriend and whatnot. And there's a father figure in here who's arranged a marriage for this guy's girlfriend, and that stuff is crazy because we're watching a 1983 one that I has Suzzanna in it for 83, and it's like a period piece. I believe it's a period piece where basically we have those arranged marriages then, and this horrible kind of male-dominated, rich kind of asshole kind of society. And even in this society, right, the father still, I arranged a marriage for you in 2007, 2008, so it's still in these movies. But what happens, in the film is these characters end up kind of going back to this hometown, and one's directly tied to his past life, which involves Suzzanna and other people, which not necessarily spoiling it. Her husband again pops back up in here, and the first movie he ever did was 1982, Sangkarang, which is like a kind of epic fantasy, like not ghost story, but epic fantasy. I think like almost, I would say like a story that ties into the mythos of Indonesia, right? And it has that kind of, I don't want to say like, it would be like a typical biblical story for Indonesia, but it's not, Christianity. But that story is something that's very, maybe old, predates that kind of stuff, But a story like that, and that's where she met her husband Cliff Mantra, I think it is, and he's in this one playing her son again. So he plays her son in that one too, which has an incest storyline. So it's a really bizarre kind of story there. That one, Sankarang, but he plays her son here, and he has like mental problems. And we kind of get this whole story that unfolds, and we get this big reveal at the very end why their ghost ambulance is haunted and stuff like that. And the title Ghost Ambulance is a very silly title, right? Everybody's like, what the hell? Like the movie that my friend Jorge did, Hellvan, right? You hear something like that, and you're like, what the fuck? Is it Hellvan he did? There's a movie called Hellvan, or I think it's Hellvan. To what he did. It's a wild, weird movie. But Ghost Ambulance, right? So it definitely feels very Japanese inspired, right? The one thing I did notice, to me, it felt a little repetitive in some of the stuff, and it never really came together fully for me. I did appreciate the ending and the reveal and stuff like that. The one thing I did find impressive, like when you watch a lot of Joko Anwar movies from like 2000, like Satan's Slaves, the kind of remake sequel deal, and his other stuff like that, genuinely great at making scares. And this one does it as well. Like, I think the scares are pretty well done, and the ghost and whatever you see are terrifying, because they're kind of like wrapped in these sheets, and they'll be standing behind you in these blue faces, and I think that's probably the most effective stuff in here. The quality doesn't look great. They kind of warn you in the very beginning that this is the best version they could get. Overall, I think it's very interesting to watch Suzzanna. I think she does a good job, and I think some of the scares are genuinely good and well done, but I think that a lot of the characters and a lot of the repetitiveness, if you've seen a lot of ghost stories, I think it does kind of wear out its welcome. Overall, I think Ghost Ambulance is an interesting piece, but not necessarily, Suzzanna's greatest work or anything like that, but I don't think that's what people would expect from it. As far as the special features, we have the making of Ghost Ambulance, which is like 28 minutes long, kind of talks with the interviews with Suzzanna, and you get a lot of background. You can kind of see that you get showbiz on location interviews with the cast and crew, Ghost Ambulance, select interview with actors Suzzanna and Cliff Sangre. And this stuff is interesting because at one point they're like trying to point like she needs money, that's why she's coming back. So like, you could see the kind of reason why she wanted to talk about the movies and not her private life, because there does seem to be a little bit of a, I guess, sinister quality to the media, but in Indonesia, which is probably everywhere. You know what I mean? That idea that they're trying to paint this story, and Suzzanna's such a big star. But it is very kind of heartwarming to see her come back to the spotlight before she passed away. Bittersweet kind of deal here. But overall, nice start to the Suzzanna Queen of Black Magic box set. Here's Suzzanna, Empress of the Dark. The other 4 movies in here are Malam Sancha Suro, Kilwong Friday Night, Pack with Forces of Evil, and White Crocodile Queen. I think Pack with the Forces of Evil is the 91 one, was her last film before she went to TV. But yeah, nice set. Glad to have it. A nice hard box here. But love these kind of sets like this. Great stuff. Okay, I'm going to be very brief with this one, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So, I always kind of complain a lot about the Marvel movies here and there and whatnot, but I grew up being a big comic book fan and Marvel fan and superhero fan and stuff growing up and stuff. I collected the cards and the toys and the comics and everything of that nature, watched all the cartoon shows. I feel like we got oversaturated with them, but when they first came out, they were very fun, and they put out some really crummy movies, like the first X-Men and stuff was terrible. But I came back to them eventually and watched stuff like the Avengers and the Deadpool movies and the Guardians movies, and I realized I really like the Deadpool movies and some of the other ones, and I really liked the first 2 Guardians films. So I was like, I'll finish out the Deadpool movies, enjoyed that. So I was like, I'm going to check out Guardians 3, because I need something that, it's just going to be something that's like, I guess, comfortable, I guess, and I think the Guardians films stand out a little bit more. I think James Gunn's a fantastic director. I loved everything he directed, except, I didn't watch the new Superman. That's not really my thing. Maybe I'll watch it. I just don't like Superman. But I love Super. I love Slither. I loved, all that stuff like that. And I liked the Guardians movies, and I even liked the Suicide Squad quite a bit. So I was like, let's pop in, the Guardians Volume 3. Of course, Chris Pratt and the same cast and crew comes back. Drax the Destroyer, played by Batista. Rocket Raccoon, Bradley Cooper, Vin Diesel is Groot, and the other people that are in there like Mantis and Nebula, and I can never think of the actress who plays why can't I remember the actress I fucking can't remember her name, but the love interest from the main kind of love interest of Chris Pratt. I can't think of the character's name, but she dies in one of the Avengers movies, spoilers, but she's back, and she doesn't have the same memory and all that kind of stuff. We bring back James Gunn's brother in a bigger role, and we introduce Adam Warlock as kind of a comedic foil, weird kind of thing like that. I don't really understand understand why, but maybe that's just how James Gunn had to do it. And Adam Warlock's a character that has been floating around in my mind for years. I've always seen him, always remember him being incredibly powerful, but don't know all that much about Adam Warlock. That's why I like the Guardians movies, because they're characters that I was vaguely familiar with, but I wasn't super, I didn't know them like Wolverine or Spider-Man or Captain America or even the Juggernaut. So it was like characters that I knew in passing, or Thanos. But, like these guys are space guys. I didn't know, Star-Lord all that much. But, obviously Star-Lord's heartbroken that he lost kind of the love of his life here. And they kind of end up, this is kind of Rocket's movie in a lot of ways. So we have Rocket getting hurt in the very beginning of the movie, and they're trying to save his life. But somebody from Rocket's past comes back, the High Evolutionary, another character I knew by name and stats and things of that nature, that he was an incredibly powerful character. And he is this character that wants to make the universe perfect. And he is a terrifying villain. Kind of like the character in Deadpool vs. Wolverine, Cassandra Xavier's twin sister, also a terrifying villain. Sometimes you get really scary ass villains and are almost like hard to fit in your movie because they're fucking demented. He's like a space Sinister or Apocalypse of something of that nature, right? Where he's doing all these genetic modifications, making these planets and stuff, and then destroying what's not perfect. Complete evil bastard that has no idea that he feels like he's a hero of the universe, but he's actually a complete inhumane monster. Great villain, great portrayal of him, and he wants Rocket because Rocket was this one experiment that somehow thought beyond its means, and he doesn't understand why, and it drove him completely mad. So he's after them. He's in there after the Guardians, right? And the Guardians has turned into the kind of family superhero group, right? Where they're very close, and at times it's very heartwarming and touching, but sometimes they cross that line where, to me, it becomes cheesy. And it happens a couple of times. I can't take CGI, characters dancing seriously. It's where it's crosses the line where I'm like, even Baby Groot in the first one, I'm like, guys, no, nah, that what's that Jonah Hill gif where he's like, that's me. I'm just I'm a miserable comedy police asshole when it comes to that kind of stuff. But that's just too much for me. But the one thing I did like a lot of this movie, and it's heartwarming and touching and incredibly sad, and pushes the buttons. It pushes the boundaries on the PG-13 rating, which I'm sure what it got, because there's these experiments and characters die in really tragic, sad ways. And Rocket's a tormented character, and I ended up coming out liking Rocket more. I'd always liked him, but the guy who steals the show for me is Drax. And Batista, I've seen him in other things, and I don't think he's a fucking amazing actor or anything, but I think he is tailor-made to make Drax. I think James Gunn knows how to use Batista. I think he uses Drax perfectly, and I think his comic timing and everything like that is wonderful. And I think Drax is the most heartwarming, funny, great character, great portrayal by Batista as well, because he's that character that doesn't have sarcasm. He can't figure that stuff out, and his interactions with Star-Lord are great, but his interactions with Mantis are even better. And I think Mantis is another kind of great funny character, that empathetic character. Nebula also fantastic in this one, kind of steps up and steals a lot of the spotlight from some of the bigger characters in the movie, and I think she's fantastic. The action's fun, and I don't think the CGI is overly fantastic when it comes to some of the villain violent monster characters, because I don't think they want to make them ultra realistic because they're popping people's heads off and shit sometimes. But yeah, I think overall this is incredibly fun in tons of aspects. Easy to digest. Never bored, even though it's damn near 2.5 hours long. And again, it fits in line with the other Guardians movies. I liked it quite a bit. I've enjoyed almost every James Gunn movie I've seen, and loved, I would say, a lot of them, like Slither and Super. I think the Guardians movies, along with the Deadpool movies, are my favorite of the Marvel franchise movies, and I definitely would watch Deadpool vs. Wolverine again, and I would definitely watch the Guardians movies again. Very enjoyable, and the Suicide Squad by it's a DC property, of course, but by James Gunn. Liked it a lot, and I would recommend it. And they open it up for more Guardians, but they changed some aspects around. Yeah, just really enjoyed this one. Touching stuff here. The scene where Raccoon reaches in and all the raccoons crawl on him and stuff. It's great. And to me, I never really could get emotional watching the Avenger movies because I felt like they were too cold or too predictable. But the Guardians movies win me over. But sometimes they go a little too far where it becomes cheesy, and I'm like, I don't know about that. Of course, great soundtrack because it's directly incorporated with the film. Some movies you watch and you're like, why are you doing all these fucking needle drops? Why is there so many needle drops? Like the Fear Street, the first one, I was like, we had 12 needle drops in 5 seconds. I can't take that. But this movie, there's a reason for some of the needle drops. Although I don't hate the Fear Street movies, but the first one, the first 15 minutes, was like, this is fucking terrible with the needle drops. But we're setting a stage. It's like, no, it's driving me crazy. This one, I felt like it was just, although sometimes it pushes it. Overall, The Guardians 3 was pretty damn good, enjoyable stuff here. And of course, I'm trying to think of cameos and stuff. You have some of the original people from like the old James Gunn movies that are pop up in here, which I definitely enjoyed seeing. But loved it. Really good stuff. Okay, we're going to get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
What's it like?
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
God blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel?
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the Videodrome! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
Okay, the first up is more of a sci-fi movie, sci-fi thriller, I guess you call it, and it's directed by Dungus Trumbull, who directed, of course, Silent Running, but he did the visual effects on Blade Runner, so he kind of had proven himself quite a bit, and this is Brainstorm, which I think was made in 81, I think, but not released until 83 because they had to do some reshoots for MGM, although this is a Warner property now. They do some reshoots because Natalie Wood, who stars in this movie, died tragically. The whole story on the boat. It's a very, really dark Hollywood story. Christopher Walken's also in this. Louise Fletcher, Cliff Robertson. Cliff Robertson, great performance. Louise Fletcher, great performance. Natalie Wood, also a comeback movie here, good performance. And Walken, as his kind of very bizarre role, as he was kind of known for, and would kind of push forward here with stuff like this and Dead Zone the same year. But he's like. I can't exactly figure out what the titles of Louise Fletcher and Christopher Walken are, but they're working on this weird brainstorm thing that you can put this thing on and it can capture your emotions and feeling during like roller coaster or anything like that. And they're going to try to manufacture this through Cliff Robertson is producing and paying for the whole damn thing. And Natalie Wood is the ex-wife of Christopher Walken, and she's going to design the headset, and they're going to work together. That's kind of the thing here, and they're doing all sorts of testing and things of that nature. And then as their kind of arguments are heating up and everything of that, Walken starts to kind of use it to capture old memories that him and his Natalie Wood had. So their kind of love is kind of rekindling and everything like that while he's dating Louise Fletcher. So that's an issue here. Louise Fletcher is one of the all-time like great actresses, I think, with her performance as Nurse Ratched and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. She pops up in other things like, of course, Invaders from Mars, and she was in some B movies and stuff like that. But Walken's also a fantastic presence on screen here, one of the best actors I think of all time. I don't know if he's his best performance in this one. One of the most memorable actors, I would say. I love Walken, but some people, I think he's a acquired taste. A great performer, though. A deer hunter and everything like that. But yeah, and Natalie Wood is good. She's an actress that I've seen probably in a couple things. Not super familiar with Natalie Wood as I should be. She's more of a classic Hollywood actress or in classic Hollywood stuff. But yeah, Cliff Robertson I know from the great Northfield, Minnesota raid. Good actor. And what's that, Malone? Is he the bad guy in Malone? Yeah. But I like Cliff Robertson. I think he's great in this role, kind of portraying that, right? So, of course, there's going to be some business kind of aspects where people come in that try to take the project away from our main kind of characters here. One of them is Donald, what is his name? Holland from One Dark Night, some other films as well. And that's kind of where we're at here, but Christopher Walken's going to fight it and everything like that. And what really kind of is the turning point in this movie is somebody wears the headset when they have a massive heart attack, and they can kind of see what that person saw in death, and they kind of get that glimpse at the future, right? Of the going into the afterlife, which is completely bonkers, weird, incredibly, thought-provoking science fiction idea here, which I thought was cool. And this kind of reminds me of something like Looker, right, from 81, which has a lot of thought-provoking ideas in it by Michael Crichton, and I think it's kind of in vein with that. This movie kind of loses me in the third act because we start having the hacker computer system like scanners, and this was made originally in 81, so that's the same time, right, using your telepathy to get into the computer system. We have this weird hacking scene with Natalie Wood and Walken, which I'm like, I don't know what the fuck science is going on here, but it doesn't really work for me. But and it kind of ends in this big kind of extravagant kind of special effects little thing. And it's okay, and overall I think the movie's interesting. I think it's worth watching, but I don't think it's great. There's no features on it, obviously, because of the tragedy that struck on it. I think they probably wanted to avoid anybody talking about this movie. Probably nobody wanted to talk about the fucking thing, but it's an interesting sci-fi movie by a director that basically quit Hollywood after this one because of the dealings and all that kind of stuff like that. But Silent Running's a great movie, and obviously the effects on Blade Runner are fantastic, and this one's interesting, worth a watch for sure. Probably could have been a better movie if there was just the tragedy didn't strike, but still interesting enough. Brainstorm. This one from 83 is an Indonesian horror flick, and it is Ni Ageng, the Decoy Queen, and this is more fantasy than horror, but it does star Suzzanna, also stars Barry Prima, and a couple other familiar faces that I think a lot of people would have seen. And this one is a definite kind of great kind of one to watch while we're talking about Suzzanna, because how she's like this feminist icon standing up to the evil, like rich old white guys and stuff like that of these movies, marrying multiple brides and everything like that. This movie fits right in line with that. So what we do have is Suzzanna in the very beginning of the movie. She's trying to rush home to her father in this massive storm and get to her. And her father is the skinny gaunt guy from The Warrior, the evil kind of sorcerer guy. He's in a bunch of these movies, and he's in Primitives, I think, as well. But she's rushing in the storm to get back to her father, and her father says, "Listen, I don't care about your mother. She's dying. I don't give a shit. Leave me alone." And he's sleeping with this new this woman and everything like that, and tells her to go away. And she ends up going back to her sisters, her family, her sister, and her dying mother. And her dying mother tells her daughters, please have a kid, even if the father won't stick around, yada, yada, yada. We kind of fast forward now, the mother's dead, and the father is dealing with this rich guy who has multiple wives. He's like a plantation owner, has multiple wives, I think, and basically the father has pawned Suzzanna off to marry her. And this is basically your life now. You're marrying, this man, no matter what happens. Her sister is impregnated with a man that left her, so the father has shunned her, hates her, thinks she's trash, treats her horribly, because the father's a piece of shit, as we have learned. So basically the guy is supposedly a nice, kind guy, treats his wife well, but on the wedding night she's not feeling well, and she gets news that her sister is very sick, and the scene how her sister got very sick is very nasty and pretty button pushing, I think, for this time in this country. But at the time, pretty gnarly stuff here. And the sister is dying, and he forbids her going. He's like, you're gonna have sex with me, then you can go see her. So she decides, fuck you, I'm leaving, and runs out, and they track her. She ends up falling into a river, and barely surviving, but basically her husband falls into and dies. This kind of mystical person finds her, saves her, says, oh, not all men are horrible. And she does have a run-in with Barry Prima, who's a woodsman, and ends up saving her from a gangbang, which seems to be a common thing thing in these movies, a gang rape, if you will. And she ends up going back, and at this point, her husband has died, and there's kind of a helper who's this evil kind of guy who wants to take over and marry her and take her kind of assets and control her and everything like that. But she doesn't know, and she's kind of running this plantation much better than a lot of other people do. And this guy starts to pick off people with poison darts and the help of another evil kind of magical character, which is very common in these movies, right? The bad guy needs help from an evil kind of magical entity, and he starts to pick off these people, anybody that interferes with him kind of taking Suzzanna. And that's where Barry Prima is this badass, and they start to have a relationship. And of course it's going to come to a head, right, where we're going to have this big magical kind of fight showdown where even Suzzanna gets down fighting all these women. And there's a funny scene in here where Suzzanna rips off the breast, exposing this woman's breast, and I was like, I've never seen that in the Indonesian movie. So 83, we're getting a little bit more explicit in the sexual natures and stuff like that. We even blur out Suzzanna naked in this one, so I was like, oh, we're getting into that different time. I guess they're allowing this stuff to be more explicit in there. But I think it fits well within the Suzzanna documentary, and kind of pointing out a lot of these things like that. But this one's pretty decent film, not horrible, more fantasy than horror, but it does have a couple elements, the flying head stuff, a cat crawling out of a midsection, and I enjoyed this one. A little long, 100 minutes, but that's not too in terms of Indonesian films, but it fits about the runtime. I'd say like 90 to I would say 105 minutes is usually the runtime on these ones. But overall, I'd recommend this one. If you're a fan of Indonesian flicks, I wouldn't start with this one. I definitely would start with Mystics and Bali or Queen of Black Magic or The Warrior or the Snake Queen, one of those ones. Although Snake Queen 2 and 3 are much better, but I would start with those ones. I think those are a little bit more approachable than this one. But I think this one's decent, solid, has your martial arts, has your horror elements, has your fantasy elements, has a lot of the magical things here and what you're looking for in there. Although, Barry Prima does end up having to save the day, so it's not completely at that element, but it does have a lot of the stuff of Suzzanna, being this kind of cultural icon in it. So good stuff. Boy, this is a weird one here, and this is Carnal Games by Andrea Bianchi. And Andrea Bianchi, of course, did Strip Nude for Your Killer, Burial Ground. He did the Fulci Presents movie that I covered a couple weeks back, right, Massacre, and he did Manic Killer. So he has a long list of bizarre movies here, and Andrea Bianchi is, one of these kind of, he's not an A-list Italian director. He's done a lot of porno films, and he's done weird horror films, and he never reached the heights of Burial Ground, I think, amongst horror fans. But Carnal Games is a weird one, because on the description, it's basically two kind of guys that are traveling around, go raping women or go on a rape spree. So you're like, this is going to be a dark, nasty roughie, because this movie is a hardcore sex film, right? I think the inserts are probably not the same people, right? The hardcore inserts. But so right in the beginning of the movie, we have these two guys raping this woman, and I was like, okay, we have pretty explicit stuff. And as they go on, they end up pulling over this young girl, and this not young, it's a woman, and the guy has dressed up. They end up pulling up a trans person, and they start to like almost have sexual relations with her, and then realize that it's a male to them. So they scream and freak out and kick her out of the car. And surprisingly, these guys are like, that's just gross. Like, it's so weird. Like, like you, in this typical, like, if it was an American exploitation movie, they would have most certainly killed this person. But in this one, they're just like, that's gross. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. It's like kind of relief that it didn't go super nasty. And this movie never quite goes, like, to the nasty extremes that you think it is. Although it does do nasty shit, it never becomes like an actual roughie, like Forced Entry or something like that, where people are cutting up people and slashing people, but it is this weird kind of mixture. So one of the characters gets the idea that maybe if I dress as a woman, it'll be easier to get women to come into the car. And you get the idea that it's very much a fetish for him, that he likes being dressed as a woman while they sexually assault these women, right? And that's kind of where it lands here. And the next person they do sexually assault is a young farm girl who ends up in the hospital, and we kind of shift gears at times to Sirpa Lane, who's in Labete and some other Borlacek movies, and she ended up having a tragic death. And I think the 90s of HIV, I think that she basically said was from being in the porn industry at times. I'm not sure, but I think that's where it is. So Sirpa Lane is kind of a major actress in this film. So it's weird seeing her and stuff like the Labete from like 1974's Labete. It's been years since I watched that, but that's kind of like a big art house kind of extreme, like popular movie, right? I wouldn't call it extreme or exploitative. I mean, it is exploitative, but it's an art film at the same time. Weird director, Valverde and Borlacek, I think is how you say it, but Strange Life of Dr. Osborne and Dr. Jekyll and Miss Osborne, which is a great movie. Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Miss Osborne. But, his movies are strange. So Serpa Lane being in this was weird to me. I was like, oh, that's just strange looking at the cast. But she plays this doctor who is pretty gung-ho about, giving rapists their just desserts. And she has this interaction with this police officer, have this relationship. So we have a lot of this kind of, this talk of ideology back and forth about punishing these criminals, these rapists, and everything of that nature, right? And it's only a matter of time before these two people's worlds collide, right? Very Brazilian in a lot of ways, right, of these movies, right? A lot of the Brazilian movies feel like that nature as well. But we have these two ideologies. Of course, these horrible, disgusting rapists and this woman who's says that rapists should be punished in extreme fashion. She's talking in his whole speech, and of course it's going to come to that moment, right, where these characters have a run-in with each other and the rapists are going to do what they've been doing the whole movie. But the revenge aspect is very short but very effective and done for laughs and really fucking weird. This movie is bizarre in tone because it's like a light-hearted rape movie where they have like an uncle that they take around as well who's like Peeping Tom uncle, and you're like, what the fuck is this? This is a completely on PC kind of movie with the tone and everything of that nature, but roughies and porn films often are, right? Especially stuff like the Pinky movies or the Nikatsu erotic films from Japan are very much not going to be very digestible for people that are going to be easily offended by this shit. But this one, again, fits in that vein, right? Where it's a comedic, lighthearted movie about a buddy rapist that go around and rape women and everything like that, and they run into the wrong person, of course. And the end scene is like hilarious and just desserts in a way, and you're just like, what the fuck? But very much like, if I say that, it'll spoil it, but I'm gonna have to anyways. It's very much like a ladies club kind of style deal, which I can appreciate. Balls in a martini glass, there, I said it. I'm gonna show it in the fucking essay for 83 anyways. But man, Andre Bianchi, weird fucking director, and I've never seen any of his porno films. Maybe I have, I didn't remember, but damn, fucking wild, weird shit, man. Carnal Games. Check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. It's a weird one. Okay, this next one here is Bondage, Angel in White, and this is, the assistant director of this movie actually directed the one from 82, the Boko one, where the group of guys run around and rape a bunch of women, and I found like really kind of fucked up, honestly. It was one of those ones where I was like, this is darker and more twisted and more, I guess, guerrilla-style filmmaking than I expected. So seeing this one was one that popped up on my radar, and it didn't have access to it originally when I did the 83, and it popped up, and I was like, we're going to check it out, Bondage, Angel in White. And this one, I feel like kind of a Sato movie. Not as good as a Sato movie, not as good as that other movie from 82 either. It was impactful, but it's a bizarre one that fits in line with a lot of these kind of ones that aren't from kind of the major studios. They're like subsidiary of a major studio or just kind of independent kind of deal here. So what we have here is this nurse who is almost sexually assaulted by this. She's assaulted, but not actually fully raped by this guy. And she gets away, and she goes up to the nurse, and she goes back to work, and we realize she's a nurse. She has this relationship with a doctor who likes to use cactus or cacti, if you will, in the sexual kind of scenes. So I know somebody mentioned that in the letterbox, like, and it predates this movie. And I can't remember which one was a Sato movie with the cactus upset, but it does not predate Expensive Taste from Taiwan, Hong Kong. That movie, definitely, the killer uses cactus in his sexual exploits from 82, which is a wild fucking weird movie too. And but the doctor here is like has this fetish where he likes to hurt people with the cactus, and you eat it afterwards because it's good for you and whatnot. But yeah, it's just like every man in this movie's a piece of shit, kind of like the Suzzanna movies, right? Every guy that she encounters besides like one is a bad guy. So she's having this relationship with the nurse, this doctor, this nurse is, and obviously it does not seem like a great one, a healthy one, but who am I to judge? I'm watching these movies after all, right? So the rapist here ends up having some sort of nerve damage, and he ends up collapsing outside. He ends up in the hospital, right? And this guy is infatuated with the nurse that he tried to molest, and it turns out that she looks exactly like she's a shoehorn in for this guy's sister. So there's this incest aspect, right, where he's like, my sister was a nurse and you look just like her, and he's trying to have sex with her while his like nerves are collapsing. But of course other characters come in, and there's random sex scenes because this is kind of that deal, right? This is a softcore movie where we have to add in a sex scene every 10 minutes or 5 or 20 minutes and everything like that. But yeah, the end movie ends up being kind of like another kind of a rape scene here, but the nurse kind of gets slight revenge. I don't want to spoil absolutely everything, but I don't think this one's as deep or as intelligent or as it's hard to say what's intelligent when you're talking about these movies, but I do think sometimes like stuff like the Angel Guts movies will cross that line and be like, oh wow, that's like poignant or kind of saying a lot of things. Or even the Nikatsu erotic films can sometimes be like these good movies made by directors, but they have to add porno in them, and they say these fucked up twisted things that are in people in psychology. This one attempts it. I don't think it ever gets to a Sato level or a Nikatsu erotic film level on those better ones. Some of them are this is better than some of them. But I do think it's interesting. I think it's short enough to warrant a watch. 64 minutes, but interesting one. Not necessarily horror, but definitely. It's fringe horror. I don't think it's as good as something like serial murder rapist or something from '83. I think that one's kind of the standout when you're talking these kind of movies like that from this year for sure. But interesting enough. Bondage, Angel in White. Okay, the Patreon pick is not Pieces. I've covered Pieces in depth for the 1982 video with a bunch of great guys, but it is the special feature on here, 42nd Street Memories, all new feature documentary containing interviews with Sam Sherman, Bill Lustig, Larry Cohen, Frank Henenlotter, Barry Ginavanzo, Jeff Lieberman, of course, John Skipp, Lynn Lowry, Terry Levine, and many other exploitation icons, directed by Caleb Weidel, who did a Cannibal Holocaust doc, which I would like to see. But yeah, this is a great documentary. It's not the first time I've watched this one. I don't remember the runtime on it. I think 2014 this bad boy came out. But yeah, I don't know how much more in depth I could talk about this, but it's not necessarily just a Talking Heads documentary, but it does, it has a lot of the people in here talking about it, Talking Heads to a certain extent, but there's cuts in, images of 42nd Street, footage from 42nd Street in there as well. But has one of the MVPs of this release, this doc is, of course, 42nd Street Pete, who is a 42nd Street historian, and he has probably the craziest stories, right? Being stabbed on 42nd Street, hooking up with prostitutes on 42nd Street, all that kind of stuff like that. And he seems to have lived 42nd Street, and he's, kind of talked about this, this time and this place, and he seems to be one of the authorities on it, and I would agree. He's also a highly intelligent guy when it talks movies, and, a good guy as well. But as far as I could tell, it has small interactions with him and seeing him on social media and stuff like that. Seems like a solid guy, and of course knows his shit, had magazines and loops and stuff, all sorts of stuff. But also it has tons of people that were filmmakers at the time talking about 42nd Street, their experiences on there, and they're fun to watch, right? Of course, all these people that you've seen talk about other things are here. Lloyd Kaufman and Joe Dante and Larry Cohen, all just like legends, and so many Sam Sherman and these guys that had passed away, movies that they had produced and ended up on 42nd Street, like Terry Levine, who had an office on 42nd Street talking about how dangerous it could be, but he misses it and he loves it. And Terry Levine was a tough motherfucker from Aquarius Pictures. I think he was one of these guys that was a boxer and everything like that. So, all these movies that he produced and stuff. And he said, when you saw that Aquarius Picture logo, people are going to go nuts because we're going to give you the goods. So there's just so much good information here that you have to hear from these people talking about it, right? And I remember like some historians who complain when people call themselves, I would never call myself a historian. I'm just a fan of these movies, right? Because I didn't like, and somebody said they were a 42nd Street historian. I remember 42nd Street Pete. I don't remember, it was a documentary interview or something like that complaining about that. He's like, man, if you didn't jerk off or spill cum on the seats of 42nd Street, I don't think you could be a historian. I always found that very memorable line that he said. But yeah, it just seems like an incredibly wild time, and of course film fans are going to be nostalgic for it or put rose-tinted glasses on the thing because they're seeing all these movies dirt cheap and everything like that. But a lot of the same people combat the dangerousness of 42nd Street, saying, hey, I was a 14-year-old kid and I went there a million times and I was perfectly fine, right? But they mentioned how much drugs were there, and it ran rampant with crime and drugs and all these things like that. But at the same time, it was a paradise for film fans because you could see a triple header of 3 movies or any different kind of movies, any kind of movie you would want, anything that you would want is on 42nd Street here. I think that Weidel did a great job on this one. I think it's tons of information. I think this is a timepiece even for that time in the 2014, capturing all these people, a lot of which are no longer with us, including Terry Levine's not with us, Larry Cohen's not with us. Who else is on this back of this damn thing is still no longer with us? Lieberman's still there, Buddy's still there, Sam Sherman, I don't know if he's still alive. I think he might be alive. I know some of his stuff just got released by Severn Films, but don't quote me on that. But it's interesting seeing this, especially the guys who actually had movies produced and played on 42nd Street is also really nice too, right? Because they can talk about their personal experiences seeing movies and then see their movies on there and see how people reacted to that kind of stuff as well. But overall, a great little doc, and I don't want to call it little and belittle it, that's not what I'm doing, but a nice little supplemental, a great supplemental feature for Pieces, which is an excellent release from Grindhouse Video. When we get the 4K, I hope it gets ported over. But love the movie, love that little bonus feature on there. You can watch it on Night Flight if you don't have this release of Pieces, but great documentary. I would highly recommend it if for fans of 42nd Street, fans of Pieces. Check it out. All right, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns. And I know I'm recording this a bit early, so if your comment's lost in the shuffle and it doesn't get read, please do not take offense to it. I'm getting oral surgery tomorrow on Thursday, and I cannot do it after the oral surgery because I know that I probably won't be able to talk very well, and it'll probably be quite some pain. I should be okay. I'm not trying to be over dramatic, but you know, it is what it is. So we have signed Tinser 5708. What's Aaron Rodgers doing? You're not the first guy to call me Aaron Rodgers, and you probably won't be the last. It is what it is. Gene Swart Swag. Has anyone ever told you that you resemble Matt from Dinosaur Dracula and the Purple Stuff podcast? No, I do not know who that is. I looked them up, and I can see some of the similarities in the face. I would say so. Gabriel gives me an awe. Thank you. What the flick? I love Inner Space. I've always tried to get my wife to watch that. Nothing but trouble in the burbs, but she has no interest. I've been waiting for someone to release The Ugly on Blu-ray. Blu-ray. I turned in the bill for Code Red. I wish we should start calling them Blu-rays. I didn't like The Black Blood, but still an awesome flick. Love Ugly. She's got to watch The Burbs. Divorce her. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But Nick from Flanders, thanks for your honest review of Cut, Shoot, Kill. As an acquired taste in a post-screen world, we've seen it all, I guess. Lead actor Alex Hurt, William Hurt's son, is better in Larry Fessenden's Blackout. I wanted to see Cut, Shoot, Kill back when it was released because I do like Burkett Turnon's work. I recently played a sleazy cousin Darren in Osgood Perkins' Keeper, and he will star in his next one, The Young People. Did not like Keeper at all. Thought The Cousin was a decent performance. Hate the lead guy in Keeper. Don't like that movie, really. I kind of hated it. Zetter is due to arrive, taking into account another strike at the post office. I think I'll like it after having enjoyed House with Laughing Windows. Damn, that ending haunts you. Also, I'm really starting to enjoy the zombie genre, at least the ones you recommend, Sensei Dave. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love zombie movies, and I don't watch a lot of the new low-budget stuff, but for the most part, I think I have pretty good taste when it comes to zombie films. Questions. Were there scary rumors about someone in your neighborhood that kept you up at night? The little old lady that used to live near me was said to be a child-devouring witch. She did have an evil-looking cat and aggressive pet geese, plus an actual boil on her chin. No, I can't think of any neighborhood villains. I mean, there were some that we kind of gave a hard time, but I wouldn't call them villains. They were bizarre, but we had this babysitter that lived down the street that her name was Carol Ann, but she sounded just like Zelda Rubinstein, so it was funny that she would say, so every time we referred to her, we'd be like, Carol Ann. So that's pretty much it. Now, I don't know if a neighborhood boogeyman, but still somebody that we would make a villain out of. How shocked were you when the final moments of Laughing Windows were rolling? Fairly shocked. Same about as Zetter. I think that both endings are quite tremendous. 3. Would you recommend Lino Capolicino's other horror film, The Bloodstained Shadow? Man, have I seen The Bloodstained Shadow? I'm not sure I've seen that. I don't know if I've watched it. If I did, it's in vague memory. If I have a review of it, check it out. That's a movie that I bought a couple times, and I don't remember if I've ever actually watched. I think I bought the DVD from Anchor Bay, and then I probably have the Blu-ray upgrade. Is it 88 Films that did it? And that's one that I definitely need to remedy if I haven't watched it. Till next week, God willing, avoid houses with laughing windows or crying doors, for sure. No More Room in Hell podcast. What's up, Mike? I need to give Inner Space a rewatch. It's a movie I remember, but don't remember if that makes sense. 100% how I felt about it. Way up, dude. Thumbs up. Thank you. KJHorror.com. This guy has probably one of the best VHS collections of all time. Check his channel out. I have Saurians on VHS, but I never watched it. I recently watched Retcon Game, and it was a lot like a couple of movies you described today. Yeah, for sure, right? It's just like, I don't know if this is for me, but it's probably for somebody. Thanks for commenting. Mr. Gization, thank you for the take, Tom. Mr. Beautiful, thank you for the comment. What is this? That's a hard word. Grilvilo Rojo. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, this happened around 94, there was a Spanish pizza chain Spanish pizza chain that worked on a national scale that was making promotions for certain orders. One of these promotions was a collection of VHS movies, and one of those was Inner Space. I remember watching it with my younger sister, and we were like, whoa, this is amazing. We still have it, but I'm not sure if it will play on our old VHS system. Oh, that's cool. Thank you for bringing it up. Cheers. Cheers. Stephen LeBlanc. 4677. You've never seen Fantastic Voyage, 1966? I thought you were straight. It stars Raquel Welch. Prior to Ornella Muda and Flash Gordon, 1980. She's got to be the hottest woman in sci-fi. And not even straight. That's funny. But yeah, let's get into the update. I guess I got a remedy watching Fantastic Voyage here. Raquel Welch. I've seen a few of her movies, But yeah, let's get into the update. All right, let's start with this update. Let's not bury the lead. First up, we got Faces of Death in 4K. This is a Vinegar Syndrome archive. It's an archive warning this feature contains graphic depictions of autopsies, dismemberment, physical cruelty, human combustion, and electrocution. Should not be viewed by children, the elderly, or the squeamish. That's right. Faces of Death, a classic here. Yeah, I've definitely rewatched that one. It's been years. Then we have, how do you say this, man? It's French. Ténèbres, Françaises. That's not right. But what do we have here? We have K, La Note d'Or, Les Cousins, and Secret. Fuck you for putting it in French. You did that on purpose. Yeah, I'm terrible with French. These are French thrillers. We got Klaus Kinski in there, and I think I've actually heard of some of these movies, but definitely look to check them out. VSL line here. Then we got this bad boy here, Eurocrime Rarities Volume 1. Love this, love this, love this. Which line is this? VSL as well. And we got La Banda del Tuca, El Commissioner del Foro, and General del Cobra. That's Day of the Cobra. These movies have alternate names that are more common to us, Westerners. I can't remember, but Day of the Cobra is one that I probably imported a Blu-ray of, but never got a chance to watch. We got Tomas Malian there, Franco Nero, and that's Maurizio Merli. So you got 3 heavy hitters from the Eurocrime movies, probably the 3 biggest ones. And then next up, we got Vinegar Syndrome 4K Mutant. It's been years since I watched Mutant. Remember it being pretty fun. Wings Hauser, that's all I remember. Bo Hopkins, I think, is that Bo Hopkins in this bad boy? It's a 4K here. I think that's 84. I look forward to rewatching that one. And then we have the Escape from Death, other slipcover here. Another, of course, one of the Lucio Fulci Presents line. This one I have not seen, and I think this one's pretty popular. I love that cover art because I'm a pervert. You got a melted face on there, and they definitely made that butt shine. Shiny butt covers. Every cover should have a shiny butt on it, right? Walking in the moonlight butts. Yep, that should be a podcast. And then we have one from Bleeding Skull, House of Dreams. This looks fucking wild. Savage Vows from Saturn's Core. This is one that I probably had on a DVD but never got a chance to watch. Upgrading them SRSs, huh? And then we got Faust. And this, what line is this? This is, I can't even read their side. Shim? And I think I've actually heard of this film. I think this is one from 90s. Is that a Janks Funkmeyer movie? Stop motion guy, right? Oh, I can't even show this. This is a little naughty. But, yeah, this thing's damn... what company is this? This is Delirium. This is Just Franco. Satanic Sisters. That looks like Lena Romay. Boy, I can't show any of this. But you get the point. It's a naughty movie. Naughty bits on there that I can't show on YouTube. And then we have a couple of 4Ks from Imprints. Indicator. Jeez, I got Imprint and Indicator mixed up. This is The Grapes of Death by John Roland, 1978. Great movie. Very fun. Good stuff. More horror-oriented and violent for Roland than his typical stuff. But yeah, I love these deluxe editions of his movies. And then last, but certainly not least, so happy to have the 1982 top 10 for me, The Living Dead Girl. Yeah, great stuff here. John Roland again. Dead or Alive. Very tragic, sad one. Again, one of his more violent films. But that does it for the update, guys. Alright, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.